speaking of things which are really ill-defined, patriarchy.
Oh, yeah.
She never actually defines it.
Why would she?
She just presupposes its existence to the point of where it seems so all-pervasive and predates communication, discovery of continents and the like, that it must just be a biological phenomena. So either women abolish their biology entirely, as we see with the present, or Beauvoir's plan will never come to fruition. So she says, the two sexes are necessary for each other, but this necessity has never fostered reciprocity. Women have never constituted a caste.
What?
Establishing exchanges and contracts on an equal footing with men. History has shown that men have always held all the concrete powers. From patriarchy's earliest times, they have deemed it useful to keep women in a state of dependence. Their codes were set up against her. She was thus concretely established as the other. The condition served males' economic interests, but it also suited their ontological and moral ambitions.
Amazing. It's been a universal conspiracy by men since the dawn of humanity to keep women down.
There is a tweet recently that went out, and it said, and I think it was to do with the dog girl that has since been banned, and it said, women post things like this, and they wonder why in all times, all places, all civilizations, men have done things to keep them in check.
I just find this fascinating. Like the idea that the Stone Age man is like, I need to worry about women's economic success.
I could take down this mammoth, or I could oppress the wife.
Yeah, well, I'm worried that she's going to take down the mammoth instead. Like she's got a baby on her hip, but she might come out here and chuck that spear half as far as I can, half as hard as I can, and take down the mammoth. And then she's going to drag it back to the cave.
Yep.
It's like, look, come on. This is a childlike view.
Yep. Also, mythology and narrative and religion itself is an architecture of patriarchy, even though they all disagree. So,
and on the points that they do agree, they're obviously talking about some sort of biological substructure of what it is to be a human.
Yep. Jainism, obviously an architect of patriarchal conspiracy. This is why religions and their codes treat women with such hostility. By the time humankind reaches the stage of writing its mythology and laws, patriarchy is definitively established. It is males who write the codes. It is natural for them to give women a subordinate situation. One might imagine, however, that they would consider her with a benevolence as children and animals. But no, afraid of women, legislators organize her oppression.
That's interesting, actually, because in a way she's right. The religious and law codes were written by men. That's fine. I can totally grant her that. But why? Why are these men afraid of women? Why do you need to be afraid of something that's powerless? You wouldn't. You're not afraid of the mouse that's entered into your house. You're not afraid of, anything that can't do any damage. But in all times and all places, it's been well understood that women are very powerful. And actually, women's reproductive capacity is very powerful. And actually, it's got the potential to totally ruin society if mishandled. Let's say via OnlyFans or something like this.
Yep.
Or via Tinder, via massive amounts of what we would call sexual immorality. And so strict rules on both men and women for when it comes to relationships and reproduction were imposed because it was understood this would keep the civilization healthy and not have it tear itself apart into constant revenge for infidelity. That was what was understood.
Between men as well.
Powerful. Yeah, exactly. That was the key point. Each man wanted one woman, and the woman should want one man. And if that was not respected, and it's the woman's choice on who gets to have sex with her, well, she could do a lot of social damage with that power.
There's also nothing in here about the controlling of disease, which is one of the reasons for monogamy, so you don't discontinue the tribe.
Obviously, but but I'm thinking really in like willful social damage.
Yeah.
And women hate women who do this.
Oh yeah.
Like women are
I remember when you went through the Twitter thread of how to steal another man's boyfriend, and Harry said, "Oh, it happened to me." It's also attempted to be happened to me, and women despise other women that do this subterfuge
because they know that is fundamentally the power of women over men.
Yeah, and the power of women over men as well is that rejection represents reproductive discontinuity. Like you have the Medusa stare of a woman's approval. And many men, this is what stops them in today's day and age from taking the risk of ever asking a woman out in the first place.
Yep. And also you can see that this is a power and privilege that women exercise so much when you reject a woman. No one takes rejection as badly as a woman.
Yes.
Sexual rejection is, I've only experienced it a couple of times, but it's just like, oh wow, she's really angry.
I'll say no more. I prefer not to speak. If I speak, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah. But it's actually remarkable. And when you compare it to every man you know and yourself, you offer a woman out on a date. And she's like, no, and you have to take it on the chin.
Well, I think that's because, though, most women will not date a man unless they have had the conceived fantasy in their head of how it will play out. So they need to have a ahead of time investment in you as an idea before they'll agree to a date with you. Whereas most men will see women on a surface level and go, she looks pretty and nice, I'll find out more about her.
Yeah.
And they're the ones actually investing the capital in it so they can do a turnover. But women are investing the higher level of parental investment, which is risked if she sleeps with this guy.
I do also think that the fundament of a woman being outraged that she's been rejected by a man is kind of arrogance as well. It's kind of of course I can have sex with a man.
Yes.
Of course I can. And how dare you say you don't want to have sex with me? So it's a big Freudian thing to go into, I suppose.
Oh, she speaks loads about... We'll get onto...
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because that is actually the foundation of pretty much all of her arguments.
Oh, I bet it is.
But then there is a great mask-off moment that we'll go through later. So she says, the triumph of patriarchy was neither an accident nor the result of violent revolution. From the origins of humanity, their biological privilege enabled men to arm themselves alone as sovereign subjects. They never abdicated this privilege. They alienated part of their existence in nature and woman, capitalized both, but they won it back afterward, condemned to play the role of the other. Woman was thus condemned to possess no more than precarious power, slave or idle. She was never the one who chose her lot. Men make gods and women worship them, said Fraser. It is men who decide if their supreme divinities will be females or males. The place of a woman in society is always the one they assign her. At no time has she imposed her own law.
Amazing. Because, she ascribes way more agency to men than they deserve. Men didn't really get to decide that the gods would look like they look. It kind of evolves, right? It's as far as the men are concerned, it's a discovery, not an invention. It's not capricious or arbitrary. But also, you're the sovereign citizen. Now you're being conscripted into the French army to get gunned down by the Nazis.
Yes.
Like, look at your privilege as you march away to get killed by Nazis.
Yeah, and leave your wife behind to potentially get raped by a German soldier.
Yeah, exactly. It's unbelievable caricature of what people actually went through.
Yeah. So biology itself is oppression. So she
that's fair.
goes on to later establish how all of history is, what was actually the quote? The real reins of the world have never been in women's hands. They had no role either in technology or economy. They neither made nor unmade states. They did not discover worlds. Only since women have begun to feel at home on this earth has a Rosa Luxemburg, communist, or Madame Curie emerged. They brilliantly demonstrate that it is not women's inferiority that has determined their historical insignificance. It is their historical insignificance that has doomed them to inferiority.
Right. That's amazing. So when the world was dangerous and difficult, women didn't want to be in charge. They didn't want to be exploring. They weren't demanding equal rights. But once Western man had pacified the world and made it safe and predictable and had established sufficient law and order in so that women can operate with
relative safety? Yeah,
relative safety and freedom that their ancient grandmothers wouldn't have dreamed of because of the danger of it, then they're like, finally, we're not being oppressed. It's like, no. Like, you are inheriting something that took so much blood, sweat, and tears to construct. It would be at least nice to have some respect for that.
Yeah, this is the abolition of gratitude and therefore the feeling of entitlement entering by the back door.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. So she says about biology, women's history is much more complex. So she begins with the androgyny at childhood. She presupposes that we are born basically blank slates. In as much as he exists for himself, the child would not grasp himself as sexually differentiated. And then this is some quotes I've had to splice over the course of quite a few pages. But at puberty, the species reasserts its rights, obviously with the cycle of menstruation. Some women manifest virile characteristics. Too many secretions from the adrenal glands give them masculine characteristics. These anomalies are absolutely not a victory of the individual over the tyranny of the species. Gestation is tiring work that offers women no benefit as an individual, but demands serious sacrifices. So, having a family and children is no reward.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yep. So then she says sexual reproduction itself is repression.
Right.
Male domination is expressed
cry about
is expressed by the coital position of almost all animals. The male is on the female, and the organ he uses is incontestably material too, as if the vagina is an immaterial
but he
void of all times and spaces.
She would say it's a dominating position.
Yeah.
Like, but have you asked women if they like it or not?
But it is seen in an animated state. It is a tool while the female organ in this operation is merely an inert receptacle.
Oh, come on.
Have you ever been called an inert receptacle, darling? Is it really a good pet name to call your wife?
Who's she been having sex with if they're just inert
Other women?
receptacles? Well, yeah.
The male deposits his sperm, the female receives it. Thus, thanks very much.
That's very romantic, yeah.
Thus, although she plays a fundamentally active role in procreation, she endures coitus, which alienates her from herself by penetration and internal fertilization. Although she feels a sexual need as an individual need, since in heat she might seek out the male, she nevertheless experiences the sexual adventure in its immediacy as an interior story and not in relation to the world and others.
Right.
Why would you want your sexual adventure to be in relation to the world and others?
Has she asked any women if that's a problem?
That would be wonderful. It doesn't really come up in this. Most of her citations are actually case studies from Freudian psychoanalytic journals.
Right, because there are loads of women who think that's brilliant.
I've met some.
Yeah, I've had sex with a few, and and they all seem to quite enjoy it.
So she says, the woman is impregnated through the vagina and it becomes an erotic center uniquely for the intervention of the male, and this always constitutes a kind of rape.
Oh.
So all heterosexual sex is rape.
I'm not making any comments on this.
It is uncommon that the young girl's first experience is a real rape and that the man's behaviour is odiously brutal, particularly in the countryside where customs are harsh. It often happens that a young peasant woman, half consenting, half outraged, in shame and fright, loses her virginity at the bottom of some ditch. What is, in any case, an extremely frequent in all societies and classes is that the virgin is rushed by an egotistical lover seeking his own pleasure quickly, or by a husband convinced of his conjugal rights who takes his wife's resistance as an insult to the point of becoming furious if the defloweration is difficult. In any case, however deferential and courteous a man might be, the first penetration is always rape.
Right, that's just not my experience of life.
That's just not true at all.
Yeah.
And also, and this might be a contentious thing to say, but if you are married, you sign a contract, and it's not meant to be contractual because you're committing yourself to something higher than yourself, because marriage is for the kids, not necessarily the husband and wife. But if you are claiming sexual exclusivity, then you do have an obligation to make sure that the other person is satisfied. That doesn't justify rape, of course not, but you should want to make your partner happy.
I've never met anyone in a relationship who doesn't want to have sex with their partner. At least at some point hasn't had one.
Well, Simone de Beauvoir wants to have sex with multiple partners, so please excuse this.
Relation a réduit toutes les tierces personnes à un rôle secondaire.
Oui, c'est-à-dire que les tiers, tant dans la vie de Sartre que dans ma vie à moi, évidemment, dès le début, savaient qu'il y avait une relation qui écrasait celle qu'on avait avec eux. C'était très souvent pas très agréable pour elles. C'est vraiment les tiers qui ont fait les frais un peu de cette relation que nous avons établie entre nous. Donc, elle n'est pas non plus incritiquable, cette relation, puisqu'elle implique que quelquefois, on ne se conduise pas très correctement avec des gens.
Quelquefois, ça a été sur le dos des autres.
Voilà, oui. Exactement.
C'est ça.
It's just nonsense.
So reproduction itself means that women have no autonomy. It is understood that the male has integrated the forces of the species into his individuality, whereas the woman is a slave of the species. Pregnancy is above all a drama playing itself out in the woman between herself and herself. She experiences it both as enrichment and a mutilation.
Got to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. Got to get up at 5 o'clock to get ready. You know, but you're free. You're the one who's just got the reins of the civilization in your hand, man. You know, honestly, such total.
The fetus is part of her body, and it is a parasite exploiting her. Where have you heard this before?
Oh my God, that is awful.
Yep.
That is awful.
That is awful, and it is now the dominant hegemonic narrative by the pro-abortion position. Yep. She possesses it, and she is possessed by it. It encapsulates the whole future, and in carrying it, she feels as vast as the world. This actually sounds like the UNN's definition of woman, doesn't it? Timeless, formless, and eldritch god.
But it's very interesting how, again, she's acting like she's not a person in a body, right? That she doesn't have emotional states.
Yep.
She's talking as if she's some sort of disembodied rational will that's just abstractly analyzing. So, it's like, okay, well, that's fine. You can take that position if you want. But why did you begin by saying we're all particular, we're all in parochial, we're all in a particular perspective? You know, don't begin by saying that if you're not going to then embody the woman's perspective. Because actually, when they get pregnant, a lot of women feel a lot more love than they did previously. And they get a lot more emotional.
It's oxytocin. She actually says, right, she also feels like the plaything of obscure forces. She is tossed about, assaulted. Now, she conceives it as a form of violence, but we are all subject to a form of obscure force that our neurochemistry, we have no real control over. Like when we're really tired at the end of a workday and also testosterone can flow, we can snap a bit, we can get a bit grumpy, right? Just as women can weep and get a bit overly sensitive.
Yeah.
When we're not all rational beings, we're not all hyper perfect. So then for the postmodernists and Beauvoir specifically, I think this is why she is one of the shining examples of how they work, to then pretend that all philosophy is projection that comes before me, but now I am the individual rational arbiter of what is true. I can comprehensively provide a worldview, and it just so always happens to end up in my preferred form of socialism. I think it's a dishonest praxeological tool to make you nihilistic, so then they can ideologically propagandize you.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.